Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel and happy October. Today's video is going to be a 24-hour reading vlog to celebrate the best month of the year. Now, because I am no longer in college and no longer able to stay up all night and make this a true 24-hour readathon, I mean, I could try, but I also value my sleep and my health and mental well-being. So we are going to try as much as we can to make this a true 24-hour start reading any minute now and then not stop, not sleep, not do anything until that 24 hours are up. However, I do still have a little bit of work today that I have to do, so that cuts into the time, as well as I do need to prioritize sleep. That's just what has to happen now that I am no longer in college and can do it all. The 2010s Taylor was a completely different person, because I remember in high school and in college, like, staying up all night long, multiple occasions, and not even like when I needed to study or anything like that. So yeah, that's in the past, but we are going to try our best to read for as long as we can. And the way that I'm structuring this 24-hour readathon is actually a way that I've seen Olivia Reads a Latte, and I'm sure a lot of other creators do as well, where I am going to set a timer, and every time I read, the timer's going, and then when I don't read, I stop it. So I will be reading technically for more time because I'm just counting reading time. So this vlog does not stop until I read 24 hours. So I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to it. I have like such a great TBR. So many good books came out at the end of September, which is when I'm filming this, and then also like in October as well. It's a really great month to be a fan of horror. So I'm really looking forward to it. I have some graphic novels and some comics just because these are nice to fit in between bigger books. And then I also just obviously have my library behind me, and then, you know, the power of the phone, which is also the power of my library via Libby. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. I am going to be starting off this reading vlog by reading Haunt Sweet Home by Sarah Pinsker, and this audiobook is 4 hours long, so that feels very doable for this readathon. The audiobook is a multicast narration, which I love in an audiobook, and this features a set of a kitschy reality TV show where stage scares transform into unnerving reality. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Now, this one I have been seeing some very mixed reviews, so we are setting our expectations a little bit lower than I originally had them, because I don't want to start off this vlog on like a really bad note, but I do think I am going to enjoy this one. And at 4 hours long with a great audiobook cast, I'm sure I'm gonna have some fun. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're going to go ahead and start the timer, or rather the stopwatch, because I do use the timer for other things that I need in my life, like cooking. So we have our stopwatch ready, and the readathon starts now. Okay, first update time. We are almost 3 hours into the readathon, and I am almost done with Haunt Sweet Home. I don't know what I want to say about it at this point in time. The audiobook, like I mentioned before, is fairly short. I only have about 50 minutes left. It's a fairly readable audiobook. It has gotten me through my workout, taking the dogs out, and then also having lunch. So I've been doing a lot while I have been reading it, and I'm almost done, and I really wasn't going to update until I finished it, but I do also have a work thing to do in like 20 minutes, so I'm not gonna finish it before work, but I did want to come on and just give my first update before I start working, because I don't know how long it's going to be. It's a meeting that I don't know how long it's gonna be. It wasn't originally for today, which is why I had planned this readathon for today. That's a whole nother story, but yeah. So far, so good. I'm cautiously optimistic optimistic, even though this, like, reading it through, it isn't exactly what I was expecting it to be, just based on the synopsis and just how everything's going, but it's not going in a bad way. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, all of that good stuff. So yeah, I'm going to go take care of my work obligations for the day, and then I will finish up Haunt Sweet Home, and then I will check back in. I don't know when that'll be, but I'll check back in another couple of hours when I've finished both of those things. So I will see y'all later. Okay friends, so I am done with my meeting, done with the book, and it does look, I feel like it looks a lot later outside than it actually is. It's not even 5 yet. It's 4:44. In terms of my readathon, I have been reading for 3 hours. 3 hours and 8 minutes to be exact. So I started filming this vlog, like the introduction, at around 11:30, 11:45. It was about noon exactly when I started reading, so that does check out. It's 4:45 right now. I think my conference was like about an hour. So now that that is out of the way, I really do not have any other big plans that will impact reading. So the timer after this update, because I'm also not keeping the timer running while I'm doing updates. So now I do not have any other obligations for the rest of the night other than to read. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm still going to try and stay up a little bit later than I normally do. I just am not going to hold myself to the pressure of staying up all night long, and then my dogs will wake me up at the same time in the morning every single day, no matter how late I stay up. So I will be able to get a pretty early start to the day, no matter what time we go to bed tonight. So Haunt Sweet Home, I enjoyed this one overall. I think it was a little bit of a letdown, but it wasn't as much of a letdown as I was worried about based on some reviews from other people that I had seen. It was a good time. The pacing for this one felt very strange. It was short. The audiobook is just under 4 hours long. I think it's like 3 hours 40 minutes, something like that. But the first 50% of the book is a whole lot of buildup. It's a whole lot of just in terms of the pacing, it's a whole lot of, for all intents and purposes, nothing. And it's not nothing, it's character development. We're building up our character. We're learning about her job and what she is doing on this ghost hunting / home renovation show. So that is interesting, but I did notice I was already at the 50% mark. I'm like, wait a second, we have not gotten any paranormal activity. What is going on here? So the pacing felt strange, and then the latter 50% really picks up in terms of the paranormal. I liked the second half better than the first half. I want to say though, like the conclusion and the climax and the things that happen and that are set up, that feels like the real story to me, and I cannot give any of that away without spoiling this entire novella, but I'll just say what ends up happening, that feels like the impetus for a book. So without giving a lot away, I feel like the last 3 chapters of this book could have been the start of a book, if that makes sense in terms of narrative and following things, because the setup is interesting, and we don't actually get any of that. We just kind of get it through a montage. So yeah, all that to say, this was pretty good. This is, I will say, the most reality show based horror. I've picked up a lot of books, in particular this year actually, that promise that it does feature, like, it's a horror and it features a reality TV show, and the reality TV aspects never play as big a part of it as I would like. So this one, you know, the first 50% we do get pretty much that instead of anything paranormal. So we're following our main character, Mara. She's in her 30s and she's kind of in like a personal rut. She doesn't really know what she's doing with her life, and she's started and restarted community college a handful of times. It's just never worked for her. She's very directionless, and her cousin offers her a position on his show. He's the star of this show called Haunt Sweet Home, and she would just be like a tech or someone at like the very bottom rung of the ladder in terms of the production, and he said it's a win-win situation. He needs to replace someone on his crew, and if she takes this position, she'll have a job and she'll get all the family members off of her back. So she accepts this and she gets thrown into the world of reality TV. You get to see what's going on behind the scenes, because by day they have like a home renovation show, and then at night it's like the house is haunted, and the crew doesn't necessarily completely fabricate evidence, but they kind of manipulate different things to like suggest to the people living inside the house that it's haunted. So they are building up all of these fake scares, and things start like being real in terms of the haunting. So it was okay, definitely not what I expected, and it was definitely short enough where I feel okay with having listened to it and it not being what I necessarily wanted out of it. Again, I feel like the latter half of this one was a lot stronger than the beginning half. It felt kind of long for a novella, if I'm being honest, but it was fun. I would say this could be slotted into cozy horror. It didn't ever get very horrific for me, so I definitely think like the scare level, there are some scares, but I think if you can handle like Rachel Harrison or Darcy Coates, I think you could handle this one as well. It definitely fits more into a cozy horror, but yeah, first book down. So I think for my next book, we are going to switch formats, and I'm going to be picking up a physical book. We're going to be picking up a Junji Ito horror manga. I am not new to Junji Ito, but I have never heard about this specific title. I just saw it at my library on display. I grabbed it. I knew it would be perfect for a readathon. This is Mimi's Tales of Horror, and it looks like 9 scary stories. It says that actually happened. I don't know if that's true or not. Drawn from the famed collection of urban legends Shin Mimibukuro, New Earmuffs, and adapted into manga by horror genius Junji Ito. So we are following our main character, university student Mimi, and her boyfriend Nooto, and they encounter one chilling mystery after the other. So this is pretty short. I really enjoy Junji Ito's work, and I'm hoping this one is a little bit more creepy, a little bit more scary than the last book. So yeah, I'm gonna dive into this one, restart my timer, and I will check back in later with another reading update. We are now slowly creeping our way into 5-hour territory, but I did finish Mimi's Tales of Terror. This was okay. This was pretty short. There are 9 stories in here, and this is not 200 pages long, so some of the stories were just a page or two, and those were the weaker ones in this collection. There were some standouts in here. There were some ones that didn't work for me as much, but overall, it was an enjoyable time. It's not one of my favorite collections from Junji Ito, but it's not the worst one that I've read from him before either. So just out of the ones that were in here, I guess there's 10 stories in here because there's a bonus story. The bonus story Monster Prop was actually one of my favorites in here, and that is the only one that doesn't have to deal with Mimi, but we are following these like costume designers, prop designers for a haunted house, and they're designing a prop and have influences from their childhood and just the things that happen to make the prop. Maybe it's a little bit cyclical in nature. That one was pretty cool. The rest of these, our main character is named Mimi, and we follow her. Like, she's the protagonist in each of these, and by like the 3rd story, I would be running away from this town. This poor girl has so many creepy, scary incidences, and by the end of the book, she doesn't seem too affected, so that's good, I guess, but definitely some pretty horrific stuff happens to her and her boyfriend and the people around her. But I think my favorite favorite ones, I would have to say, I thought Seashore and Just the Two of Us were probably my favorite. I also did like Scarlet Circle. I think that one felt like the most complete. And you know, this is like his reimagining. He did the artwork and it's someone else's stories. So he didn't create these stories. That may be why some of them just did not hit as hard as I wanted them to. But especially like the very first story and the very last story were like a page a piece. So those didn't really do much, even though the last story, I was hoping it was longer because I liked the idea. There was some creepy imagery and then it just ended. So this was an enjoyable read. I always like picking up a manga for a 24-hour readathon just because it is a fairly easy book to get through. Not a lot of time commitment there. And it makes me feel very accomplished because now I have already finished 2 books in the readathon. So we are kind of moving on. I think I am going to pick up another audiobook. So in terms of audiobooks, I do have the audiobook Guillotine by Delilah S. Dawson from Libro FM. It's only 5 hours, so that again feels very doable. This was a book that I was really looking forward to. It just came out within the past month or so. It says it's the menu meets Ready or Not in this dark tale of opulent luxury and shocking violence. So I really liked Bloom, so I think this one could be another contender for a book that really just comes in and surprises me. I was really swept away by Bloom. I had no idea that I would love it as much as I did, so I'm really intrigued about this one. Those are some very, very weighty comp titles, but The Menu, did it just come out last year or 2 years ago now? I don't know what is time, but The Menu was my favorite movie, or one of my favorite movies. We've had some really strong horror years the past couple of years, but the year it came out was one of my favorite movies. I absolutely loved it, so the fact that this is being compared to it, I do have some very high expectations for that. So we'll be listening to that. If I want to pick up a physical book, I haven't yet decided, like physical as in turning pages. I don't have a lot of those that I feel like are good for a readathon. I have some chunkier tomes checked out from the library, but when it comes to ebooks, I do have a couple of options. The ring light is gonna make this one really impossible, but we have Woodworm by Layla Martinez. I believe that one's pretty short, so I could read that physically or, you know, as an ebook on my phone. I also have my library just got Slender Man by Anonymous, and this is a book that I've had on my radar forever. My library just never had a copy, and I had it on like my notify list forever, and all of a sudden this morning I woke up and they had gotten a copy, so I checked it out. That could be creepy, that could be a whole lot of fun. I do not know how long that one is though, so if it is shorter, I could pick up that. I have Woodworm as well, so I am going to be picking up one of those, and then of course we have Guillotine for my audiobook read. So yeah, I am going to, I don't know, get ready for dinner. I don't know what I'm going to eat yet, so my partner will not be home for dinner tonight, so it's just gonna be me and the boys, aka my dogs. So we might have a little bit of a girl dinner situation going on. So, you know, make dinner, hang out with the dogs. I have to, you know, FEED them and take them OUTSIDE. Gotta spell those out because they're smart. They know the words, and I'm sure one day they're going to learn me spelling them too, but I do have to do that with them, so audiobook will be really good for that. All that being said, I'm really excited for a fun night of reading. I've got some great books lined up, and I will check back in later with another reading update. So I just hit the 10-hour mark in this 24-hour readathon. And in that period of time, I did manage to start and finish Guillotine by Delilah S. Dawson. This book was wonderful. I had a great time reading it. It was very funny, also very gory. The comparisons to Ready or Not meets The Menu, really good. Those are very apt comparisons. I'd like to throw another one into the mix, and that would be Saw. That would be Saw. So The Menu, Ready or Not, and Saw lot. If you like those, if you take all of those movie concepts and kind of put them in a blender, this is Guillotine. And I had a lot of fun. It was gory, it was funny, it was satire. It's good for her, good for them, eat the rich type of horror, and I had a whole lot of fun with it. So we're following our main character, Des. She is running out of luck. She's almost about to graduate. She's a fashion student and she has run out of leads to chase an exclusive internship or a job or anything related in her field. She comes from a very poor working class family, a single mother, and she does not have the wealth or connections to get her where she needs to go in her career. So a girl's gotta do what a girl's gotta do. She starts dating Patrick Rushkin, and she starts dating him for one reason only, and his mother is the fashion editor at one of the best magazines in the game. If she gets in with Patrick, she can get in with his mom, or so she hopes, and hopefully be able to actually make a career out of something that she loves. So she starts to date Patrick with these ulterior motives, and when he mentions that his family meet every single Easter for a family gathering at their secluded island that the family owns, his mother's going to be there. So she invites herself along. He happily takes her, and as soon as they step foot on this island, Des is determined to make a connection with her boyfriend's mom and get in on the ground floor and be able to make connections to make her dreams come true. However, she shows up on the island and things are going to become very tense, very bloody, and very awry. So this one's a little bit on the shorter side. It's about 200 pages, so that's all you need to know, especially with the comp titles. I think you kind of maybe know where this one is going to go, but this one was really enjoyable. I had a lot of fun with Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This one I thought was even better, and she actually has another book coming out in October, so that's pretty cool. She's got a very rapid fire publishing schedule, it seems like. I think it's this or It Will Only Hurt for a Moment, something like that. It's got like a bluish cover, but she does have another book coming out soon, and I'm absolutely going to pick it up because she is now an auto-read author for me. Read 2 things from her, loved them both, cannot wait to check out more. That's pretty much all I've been up to since we last chatted. I did very briefly get into Woodworm by Layla Martinez. I do think I am going to enjoy that one and keep reading that physically. Just I didn't even make it like all the way past chapter 1, so I definitely focused on Guillotine, and I am really excited to keep reading this one as the readathon goes on. We have 14 more hours left to read, and I am going to try and make them as continuous as possible. I am getting a little tired. I do think this is going to be my last talking update with y'all, but I am not like completely out of gas yet, so I do think I will be able to keep on reading tonight. So we are going to keep on continuing through Woodworm. The only thing I'm nervous about is that this is such a beautiful poetic writing style that if it gets a little late, I'm worried maybe my brain won't be up for the task. So if that is the case, I will switch to something a little bit more straightforward, but Woodworm is the plan, so that's what I'm gonna go dive into as soon as I wrap up this clip. So it is now 12:46 and we have about 14 more hours of the readathon left to go. I'm going to go dive into Woodworm, and I will talk to y'all later. Good morning, friends. We are now 14 hours into the readathon and things are going good. I did end up finishing Woodworm this morning and I did really enjoy it. I definitely could have finished it last night, but at a certain point in the story, I realized that I was just much too tired to take in the beauty of the prose that was that story. So I tabled it and then I returned to it this morning. I actually went backwards and read a couple of chapters again, which I felt was really beneficial, and then I finished it up and I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to check out more by this author. I looked and this is her first fiction debut, I think, from at least what I can see. She has 2 nonfiction books out and this did just get recently translated into English. So while Layla Martinez was the author of this book, the 2 English translators were Sophie Hughes and Annie McDermott, and I really enjoyed it. First of all, a moment of silence for this cover because I just think this cover is so beautiful. I want it framed on my wall. It's just a beautiful piece of art. The cover was designed by Kathleen Neely, who is a printmaker and illustrator, and all of her work, I'm gonna stop myself from doing a deep dive, but the prints are super cool. They look very like vintage woodcutty type of prints. So I love the cover, and I really did enjoy this novella. It's definitely a very beautiful story. It was originally pitched as sort of a haunted house or witchy story, and I can see those, but in a very non-traditional way. It's a haunted house in the way if the haunting is the generational trauma and impact that this house has on generations of women, because the house was built by a man to keep his wife in line and to keep his wife inside the house. And the two people that we are following in this tale is a woman and her grandmother, and this house has been in their family for generations. It's a very interesting house. It almost has like a life of its own. It's very, very beautifully described, this book. There were several passages that if I had it physically, if I had purchased a copy for myself, I would be highlighting here and there almost on every single chapter because the prose was really good. But they live in this house. They are outcasts in the town. The townspeople do not like them for a variety of reasons, and I don't know how much more I want to give about the synopsis of this book because it's so interesting to kind of flow through the story with the characters, and it is a character study. It's a character study on a family. I think it's also a character study about how, you know, generational poverty and curses and things like that, and just the ways in which people mistreat each other and are prejudiced against each other are far more horrific than any supernatural paranormal sort of horror. So we follow this woman and her grandmother, and the point of views switch between chapters, and that did take me a little bit to get used to just because I didn't know what was happening. The chapters are not labeled with the characters' names, and the characters actually, now that I'm thinking about it, are not given names. They just have like names in relation with each other. Like they'll say my granddaughter or my grandmother. So we do have that. The first chapter is the granddaughter, and then second chapter we move to the grandmother. And that was a little jarring at first because it didn't like say in the chapter. A lot of times chapter titles will signify that a character POV being switched, but the way that these characters are written, you honestly do not need them. These are two characters with such clear voices, and the way that they are telling you, the reader, the story and the events that happen, they mostly line up. They sometimes diverge, and it's just so interesting seeing like this is less than 200 pages, but these characters feel very fleshed out, and getting to see, you know, even though they love each other as family do, even though family can be a very complex relationship, you see the traumas that they have and maybe how that influences how other people see them. And we'll be following like the granddaughter, and she will not understand why her grandmother does certain things, and then we'll get the grandmother's point of view and see how like her history and the things that have happened to her impact the way she responds to things. So I just thought that that was really beautiful. This definitely is very paranormal, but it's not really paranormal in terms of like boo spooky jump scares. The grandmother can see the saints, can speak to the saints. The house just has very much a mind of its own. It's a very surreal story. The blurb for this one is: the house breathes, the house contains bodies and secrets, the house is visited by ghosts, by angels that line the roof like insects, and by saints that burn the bed sheets with their halos. It's a vision of a broken family in our unjust world that places power in the hands of the eccentric, the radical, and the desperate. So I did really enjoy this one. I'm really glad that I especially did not finish it last night, and that I was able to finish it this morning with more of a coherent, awake mind, and really appreciate this one. Definitely will be checking out more by this author later on. I just thought this was such a beautiful and harrowing and haunting experience. I will say this one, probably my character-driven readers are going to like this a little bit more than my plot-driven readers, just with the way the story is told. It's a very, like, there's no linear plot. It's very jumping back and forth. It's almost as if you are talking with family members around the table, and sometimes you dive into memories, sometimes you dive into aspirations, sometimes you're talking about things that are happening in the present. So the storytelling style is very much like that, very character-driven. So if you are a plot-driven reader, I'd say go into it with some hesitation, and if you do not like it by chapter 3, it's probably not the book for you, because I did love the way that this was told, but I could see how it could be off-putting for a lot of people, because the main characters are a little bit off-putting with their frankness and the way that they are just so genuinely like upfront with you, the reader, about emotions and feelings and thoughts that maybe other people would keep private to themselves. So I really enjoyed this one. This vlog is going so well so far. So we have about 10 more hours left to go. And for my last book, I wanted to pick one that I had as a physical copy and an audio copy. So that way, you know, I don't have to switch between mediums and switch between different books, because while I do have some time, a lot of time actually, to sit down and read today, I do have chores and other adulting things that I'll need to be listening to an audiobook for. So I wanted to pick just one book I could read in different formats, so I wouldn't be switching off between two different books. I want to focus on one book, and I am going to focus on a larger book because everything else that I've read in this vlog so far has been on the shorter side. But I found this book when I went to the library the other day. It was not what I was looking for, but it did catch my eye. I love a good dark academia, and I have not heard anything about this. So this was not on my radar. It's not a new release, came out in 2018, but I do love a dark academia book, and this one, just the cover caught my eye. So I do have this checked out for my library, and then I also found the audiobook on Hoopla, so I can go back and forth, read the physical, switch to the audio, and vice versa. All I know about this one is that it does take place at Harvard in the 1980s, and it has to deal with a secret society. My library has it genre labeled as a mystery, so dark academia mystery that I'm going into pretty much completely blind. So looking forward to that. I'm going to go get to reading, and I will check back in later with another reading update. We are now 19 hours into our readathon, and it is a lot later than I anticipated that it would be by this point in the readathon. I had chosen this specific weekend for this readathon because I had thought that nothing was going on and I would be able to dedicate a lot of time to reading. However, so many things have come up just in my professional life and also in my personal life. I did end up having to work more than I had initially thought, so that ate into my reading time, and then also a number of my family members have been affected by these storms that are sweeping the east coast of the United States. Everyone that I know luckily is safe. They are physically safe, so that is really good to hear. It was just really anxiety inducing waiting to hear back from them and just hearing the extent of how different people have been affected by that. So if you're watching this and if you or anyone that you know and love is in one of those affected regions, I really hope that everything turned out okay for y'all and y'all made it out safe. It's definitely a very scary storm, especially in North Carolina, where a lot of my family were. Just seeing the utter destruction in the Asheville area and the other areas around Appalachia, just it's a lot. It's very scary to see such a jarring and horrific event happening like right before your eyes. So yeah, all of that going on really cut into my reading time. I am not complaining. I'm so glad that my family are all physically safe on property. That's a different story, but you know, the important things, what matters is that, you know, people are safe. So long tangent, but this vlog has not turned out necessarily the way I wanted it to. I did anticipate, like, I knew I wasn't going to go 24 continuous hours, but I didn't think that I would still be running my clock at 9:30 p.m. the following day. But there you have it. I did get about 20% into the Ancient Nine, and I am really enjoying this one. It takes place in October, and as I'm filming this, it's the tail end of September. It is definitely a great autumnal read. It's got those dark academia vibes. We're starting to get a little bit into the mystery, having to deal with secret societies on Harvard's campus. That's all I'm gonna give for the synopsis. I'll check back in later. I think it's going to be my last talking update when I end up wrapping up the vlog, but I'm not like very far into this, and because this is almost 500 pages, I do feel like I need to read a little bit more to give a good synopsis of this one, but I'm very pleasantly surprised, and by pleasantly surprised meaning I had never heard of this book until I just randomly saw it at the library. It's giving a little bit of the secret history, a little Donna Tartt, and a little Bret Easton Ellis as well. So if you like authors that are writing like that, then I think at this point in time, at the 20% mark, I think you'd like this as well. So I am enjoying this. I'm going to get back to reading. We've got about 5 more hours, so let's buckle in, let's get some reading done, and then I will check back in when this readathon is done and let y'all know my final thoughts about this book. And with that, we have finally made it 24 hours into our 24-hour readathon. I am really proud of all of the pages and the books that I managed to read during this 24-hour reading sprint. Even though I didn't read all of my books physically, I listened to some via audiobook. I did go on Storygraph and look at the page numbers of all of the books that I read and added them together, and I read 1,001 pages during this readathon. I only made it to page 185 in the Ancient Nine, so that puts me at 45% of the way through this book. I will be finishing up this book today, and I am enjoying myself for the most part so far. Definitely has those autumnal vibes, those dark academia vibes that I often crave. Like September, October, November, that's peak dark academia season for me in terms of books that I'm interested in reading. So this book, it takes place at Harvard in the 1980s. We are following main character Spencer, and he is a Black student. He comes from essentially a single parent home. His father died in a gruesome accident when he was really young, and that inspired him to want to become a doctor and learn medicine and learn how to heal and help people. So his background is very atypical when it comes to the average Harvard student. During the day, he comes from a lower socioeconomic background. He's on scholarship, and he's also playing in Harvard's basketball team. So he is our main character of the story, and he does have a best friend who is white and is very much entrenched within the Harvard social spheres. He knows all about Harvard. His father and his uncles and his grandfather and everyone all the way up his line have attended Harvard. So these are two very unlikely friends. They have very different relationships and knowledge bases when it comes to Harvard. At the beginning of this novel, Spencer is tapped for one of the secret societies at Harvard. These are essentially fraternities, but they're one step higher than that. They're very secretive, and while fraternities do have like a large presence, if you go to a campus with Greek life, you'll see fraternities and sororities, whether they are doing philanthropy event fundraisers or participating in the rushing process or even having parties at frat houses. These secret societies do not have any of that. It's by invitation only. The invitations are very secretive. The process of becoming one of these members is very secretive. It's called punching into one of these clubs. So Spencer receives an invitation to one of these clubs, the Delphic Club, and this is very out of the ordinary. He's very intrigued by this process because these clubs are like the elite, the best of the best in Harvard, and that doesn't necessarily mean like the best students with the best grades or anything like that. It means students who come from obscenely large sums of wealth and money and privilege and are these really old Harvard families. So it is a shock that he is initiated or has been invited into this process of being initiated. So he decides to go check it out starts this initiation process. His best friend Dalton's uncle was actually a member of the Duffic Society, and Dalton has heard a lot of very strange stories and mysteries surrounding this club. He lets Spencer in on some of these mysteries, and the two of them become very invested in this mystery that has to deal with a Harvard student in the 1920s who on Halloween night broke into the Duffic Club and was never seen from again. And he broke into the Duffic Club because there are rumors that there is a treasure room inside the Duffic Club. No one knows what the treasure is. It's like a holy grail sort of mystery. So they start investigating that mystery while Spencer starts going through this rigorous process. So the things that I'm liking about this one, this is definitely an autumnal read. Prologue takes place on Halloween in the 1920s, and then for the rest of this book you are following our characters in October and November. It's so autumnal. I love the atmosphere here, and I really love that it's very clear that Ian K. Smith has gone to Harvard before. He's a Harvard grad, and you can just really get a sense for the campus. I've never been to Harvard, but the description just makes me feel like when I'm reading this book that I'm transported to Harvard in the 80s. You get a lot of background about the different buildings on campus and why they're named the way they are and the history of the school. I really like that. I like the secret society aspects, and I like the mystery aspects. What I don't love is this feels like it was written in the 80s. It's very misogynistic with the way that it describes every single female character. Every single woman in this book is described on a scale of how attractive and how much our main character would want to date that woman. And while that may be very true for the 80s at Harvard, it's very much boys will be boys. There's not like any female characters that have any sort of depth, and I'm really getting tired of every time they're introduced to getting described exactly how attractive they are and what traits that they have that are aesthetically pleasing and what traits are not attractive to our main character. It's very boys will be boys. So that's very annoying to read. There's also a romance shoehorned in here that I really despise. I don't think that it adds to the story at all. I don't love the setup of how our main character pursues this woman again and again and again, and she finally agrees to go out on a date with him. I hate the romance. I hate the way that women are treated in this book. But on the other hand, I love the mystery. I love the atmosphere. So it's really an up and down reading experience in those aspects. I am nervous about how this mystery is going to unfold, because when I put this book into Storygraph to say that I was currently reading it, this has one of the lowest ratings I've ever seen on Storygraph. It has not even a 3-star rating. It's like a 2 point something, and that's not necessarily a deal breaker to me, because a lot of my favorite books do have like lower average ratings, but none of them have been 2 stars. But nothing has been so incredibly polarizing why this would warrant such a low rating, because other books that have been rated so low, I've read them, and even if I like them, I can see how people would absolutely hate or absolutely love a book. This does not seem to be that polarizing of a book yet. So I am nervous about the next 50% of this book, but overall, tentatively, hesitantly, I am enjoying it. I do have my Storygraph information list down below, so if you want to follow me on there and check back in and see what I end up rating this one, because I'm done with the vlog. This has been the 24-hour readathon, but tentatively, this is a good dark academia. It's an okay dark academia. I do wish that the women would be dealt with a whole lot better, but the vibes are keeping me going for at least 40% of the way through the book. So thank you all so much for watching. This was definitely not how I anticipated my 24-hour readathon to go, but I did still have a lot of fun. I read some great books, in particular Woodworm and then also Guillotine. Loved them. Those are some of my favorite books that I have read this autumn. And thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel for all of the bookish, cozy gaming, and horror content. Stay safe, stay spooky. Happy spooky season, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!